The weight of silence pressed against my eardrums as I stood beside Jack, my husband's hand cold and lifeless in mine. Marianne's funeral was a stark reminder of how quickly life could change, how swiftly love could be snatched away. The church pews creaked with the shifting weight of mourners, their black attire a sea of grief. I glanced at Jack, searching for a flicker of emotion in his stoic face. Nothing. His jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the mahogany casket adorned with white lilies, Marianne's favorite. How could he be so detached when we'd just lost the woman who'd been more of a mother to me than my own? "Eva," a gravelly voice whispered. I turned to see Robert, my father-in-law, his weathered face etched with sorrow. "There's something you should have." He pressed a photograph into my hand, the edges worn and yellowed with age. I recognized it immediately. Marianne and me, laughing at my wedding reception. My throat tightened as I ran my thumb over her beaming face. "Turn it over," Robert murmured. Frowning, I flipped the photo. Scrawled in Marianne's elegant handwriting were 4 words that made my blood run cold. "Unveil the truth, Eva." I looked up sharply, but Robert had already moved away, melting into the crowd of mourners. My heart raced as questions flooded my mind. What truth? And why me? "You okay?" Jack's voice startled me. I quickly slipped the photo into my purse. "Fine," I lied, forcing a weak smile. "Just overwhelmed." He nodded, his expression unreadable. "Let's go pay our respects." As we approached the casket, I felt a sudden irrational urge to run. Something was wrong. The air felt thick, oppressive, as if the very walls of the church were closing in around me. "Marianne was like a mother to me," I whispered, more to myself than to Jack. "I can't believe she's gone." Jack's grip on my hand tightened painfully. "She wasn't your mother, Eva. Remember that." I jerked away, shocked by the venom in his voice. "What's that supposed to mean?" Before he could answer, we were interrupted by a stream of well-wishers, their condolences a blur of platitudes and awkward embraces. I plastered on a smile, all the while acutely aware of Jack's eyes boring into me. As the service drew to a close, I found myself drifting towards the back of the church, desperate for a moment alone. I slipped into a small alcove, fishing out the photograph with trembling hands. "Unveil the truth, Eva." What did Marianne know? And why hadn't she told me while she was alive? "There you are." Jack's voice made me jump. I hastily shoved the photo back into my purse. "It's time to go to the cemetery." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As we walked out into the crisp autumn air, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. At the graveside, I watched as they lowered Marianne's casket into the ground. Each thud of dirt on the lid felt like a blow to my chest. I glanced at Jack, expecting to see some sign of grief, but his face remained impassive. "I can't do this," I choked out, stumbling away from the grave. "Eva!" Jack called after me, but I kept walking, my heels sinking into the damp grass. I found myself in front of a weathered headstone, my vision blurring with tears. A hand touched my shoulder, and I spun around, half expecting to see Marianne's kind face. Instead, I found myself staring into the concerned eyes of my father, Paul. "Daddy," I whispered, collapsing into his arms. "I've got you, sweetheart," he murmured, stroking my hair. "What's going on?" I pulled back, wiping my eyes. "I don't know. Something's not right. Marianne, she left me a message. And Jack, he's been acting so strange." Paul's brow furrowed, his ex-detective instincts clearly kicking in. "What kind of message?" Before I could answer, Jack's voice rang out across the cemetery. "Eva, where are you?" I froze, suddenly terrified of my own husband. Paul squeezed my hand reassuringly. "We'll figure this out," he promised. "But right now, you need to go back. We can't raise suspicions." I nodded, taking a deep breath. As I walked back towards Jack, Marianne's words echoed in my mind. "Unveil the truth, Eva." Whatever that truth was, I was determined to find it, no matter the cost. The days following Marianne's funeral blurred together, a haze of grief and unease. I found myself wandering through our house, touching the little gifts she'd given us over the years, a delicate china teacup, a hand-knitted throw, a painting of the ocean she'd done herself. Each item held a memory, a piece of the woman who'd become my second mother. "You're moping again." Jack's voice cut through my reverie. He stood in the doorway, arms crossed, a frown creasing his forehead. I sighed, setting down the teacup. "I'm grieving, Jack. Your mother meant a lot to me." "And what about me?" he snapped. "She was my mother. Why aren't you comforting me?" The accusation stung. "I've tried, Jack, but you won't let me in. You've been so distant." He scoffed, turning away. "Not everyone wears their heart on their sleeve, Eva." As he stormed off, I sank onto the couch, my mind drifting back to happier times. I remembered the day Marianne taught me to make her famous apple pie, flour dusting our cheeks as we laughed together in her sunny kitchen. She'd confided in me that day, telling me how grateful she was that I'd brought joy back into Jack's life. "He was so lost before you, Eva," she'd said, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "You saved him." Now, as I sat alone in our silent house, I wondered if I'd saved Jack at all, or if I'd merely been a bandage over a wound that had never truly healed. The shrill ring of the phone startled me from my thoughts. I answered, hoping to hear my father's reassuring voice. Instead, it was Robert. "Eva, dear, I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all," I said, surprised. Robert rarely called. "Is everything okay?" There was a pause, heavy with unspoken words. I found something of Marianne's. I think you should see it." My heart raced. "What is it?" "It's better if I show you in person. Can you come over? Alone?" I glanced towards the studio where Jack was working. "Of course, I'll be there in an hour." As I hung up, a chill ran down my spine. What had Robert found? And why did he want me to come alone? I scribbled a note for Jack, claiming I was going for a walk to clear my head. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but I pushed away the guilt. Something told me this was too important to ignore. Robert's house was eerily quiet when I arrived. He ushered me in, his face drawn and pale. "Thank you for coming, Eva. I didn't know who else to turn to." He led me to Marianne's study, a room I'd always loved for its warmth and character. Now it felt cold, abandoned. Robert crossed to the desk and pulled out a leather-bound journal. "I found this hidden in a false drawer," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I think Marianne was afraid of something or someone." With trembling hands I opened the journal. Marianne's familiar handwriting filled the pages. But the words made my blood run cold. "Jack isn't who we think he is," one entry read. "I fear for Eva's safety. I have to tell her the truth, but how?" I looked up at Robert, my world tilting on its axis. "What does this mean?" Before he could answer, the front door slammed. Jack's voice echoed through the house. "Dad? Eva? What's going on?" Robert's face drained of color. He snatched the journal from my hands and shoved it into a drawer. "You can't tell him you've seen this," he hissed. "Promise me, Eva." Footsteps approached the study. I nodded, my heart pounding so hard I was sure Jack would hear it. As the door swung open, revealing Jack's suspicious face, one thought blazed through my mind. What terrible secret had Marianne taken to her grave, and how much danger was I in? The memory of Marianne's last day haunted me as I paced our living room, unable to shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. It had been a typical Sunday brunch, filled with laughter and the aroma of Marianne's famous blueberry pancakes. How could I have known it would be the last time I'd see her alive? "Eva, you're wearing a hole in the carpet," Jack said, his voice laced with irritation. He sat on the couch, sketching furiously, dark circles under his eyes. I stopped, studying him. When had the man I loved become a stranger? "I'm sorry, I just can't stop thinking about your mother. Her death was so sudden." Jack's pencil snapped. "People die, Eva. It happens." His callousness shocked me. "Jack, she was your mother." He stood abruptly, his sketchbook falling to the floor. As he bent to retrieve it, a folded paper fluttered out. I snatched it up before he could react. "Eva, don't," he started, but I had already unfolded it. My blood ran cold. It was a detailed drawing of Marianne, her face contorted in fear, hands clutching her throat. In the corner, scrawled in Jack's messy handwriting, "She knew too much." "What is this?" I whispered, my voice shaking. Jack's face darkened. "It's art, Eva. You wouldn't understand." "Art?" I felt sick. "This looks like you were imagining her death." He lunged for the paper, but I stepped back, clutching it to my chest. "Tell me the truth, Jack. What happened to Marianne?" His eyes, once so warm and loving, now glittered with something dangerous. "You're being hysterical. Give me the drawing." I shook my head, backing away. "I'm calling my dad." Before I could reach my phone, Jack grabbed my wrist, squeezing hard enough to make me gasp. "You're not calling anyone. This is family business." "Let go of me." I wrenched my arm free, my heart pounding. A knock at the door made us both freeze. "Eva? Jack? It's Robert. I need to talk to you." Jack's face paled. He snatched the drawing from my hand, crumpling it into his pocket. "Not a word," he hissed, before plastering on a smile and opening the door. Robert stood there, looking haggard. His eyes darted between us, sensing the tension. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all, Dad," Jack said smoothly. "What's up?" Robert hesitated. I found something in your mother's things, a letter. It's addressed to Eva." Jack's facade cracked for a moment. "What? Why would Mom write to Eva and not me?" "I don't know, son." Robert handed me a sealed envelope. "She left instructions for me to give this to you, Eva, in the event of her death." My hands trembled as I took the letter. Jack's eyes bored into me, his jaw clenched. "Well, open it," he snapped. With shaking fingers, I broke the seal and unfolded the paper. Marianne's elegant handwriting filled the page. As I read, my world tilted on its axis. "My dearest Eva, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I pray it was peaceful, but I fear it wasn't. There are things you need to know about Jack, about our family, things I was too cowardly to tell you in life. Jack isn't who you think he is. He's dangerous, Eva. Get out while you can. Go to your father. He'll know what to do. I'm so sorry I didn't protect you better. Please be safe. And remember, unveil the truth. All my love, Marianne." I looked up, my vision blurring with tears. Robert watched me anxiously, while Jack's face had transformed into a mask of fury. "What does it say?" he demanded, reaching for the letter. I clutched it to my chest, backing away. "Stay away from me, Jack." "Eva," Robert said softly, "what's going on?" But before I could answer, Jack lunged at me, his hands outstretched. I screamed, dodging his grasp and running for the door. As I fled into the night, Marianne's words echoed in my mind. Jack was dangerous, and I was no longer safe in my own home. My heart pounded as I raced through the darkened streets, Marianne's letter clutched tightly in my hand. The cool night air stung my tear-streaked face, but I didn't slow down. I couldn't. Jack's enraged face haunted me, pushing me forward until I found myself at Robert's doorstep. I hesitated, my fist hovering over the door. Could I trust him? The memory of his calm demeanor at Marianne's funeral sent a chill down my spine, but I had nowhere else to go. Before I could knock, the door swung open. Robert stood there, his face a mask of concern. "Eva? What happened?" I stumbled inside, collapsing onto his couch. "Marianne's letter," I gasped, holding it out to him with trembling hands. She said Jack is dangerous, that I need to get away." Robert's face paled as he read the letter. When he looked up, his eyes were filled with a mixture of fear and resignation. "I was afraid of this," he murmured. "You knew?" I felt a surge of anger. "Why didn't you say something?" He sank into a chair, suddenly looking every bit of his 65 years. "I suspected, but I didn't want to believe it. Jack, he's always had a darkness in him. Marianne tried to protect him, to hide it from the world." "Protect him from what?" I demanded. "Robert, what aren't you telling me?" He took a deep breath. "When Jack was a teenager, there was an incident. A girl in his class went missing. They never found her. But Marianne, she found evidence in Jack's room. Bloody clothes, the girl's necklace." I felt the blood drain from my face. "No," I whispered, "that's not possible." "Marianne covered it up," Robert continued, his voice hollow. "She thought she could save him, change him. When you came into his life, we thought maybe—" A loud bang interrupted him. We both jumped as the front door flew open, revealing Jack, his eyes wild with rage. "You just couldn't leave it alone, could you?" he snarled, advancing towards me. I scrambled to my feet, putting the coffee table between us. "Jack, please, we can get you help." He laughed, a chilling sound that made my skin crawl. "Help? I don't need help, Eva. I need you to mind your own business." Robert stood, placing himself between Jack and me. "Son, calm down. Let's talk about this." "Talk?" Jack's voice dripped with contempt. "Like you and Mom talked about me behind my back all these years? Treating me like I was broken, like I needed to be fixed. We were trying to protect you," Robert pleaded. "Protect me?" Jack's hand disappeared into his jacket pocket. When it emerged, my blood ran cold. The glint of metal in the dim light could only be one thing: a gun. "Jack, no!" I cried, but it was too late. The gunshot was deafening in the small room. Robert crumpled to the floor, a red stain blossoming on his chest. I screamed, dropping to my knees beside him. "Robert! Oh, God, Robert!" Jack stood over us, the gun now trained on me. "You should have left it alone, Eva. We could have been happy." As I looked up at my husband, the man I thought I knew, I saw a stranger. A monster. and I knew in that moment that my life would never be the same. "What are you going to do?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Jack's lips curved into a cold smile. "We're going on a little trip, darling, just you and me." As he grabbed my arm, yanking me to my feet, I made a silent vow. I would survive this. I would unveil the truth no matter the cost. For Marianne, for Robert, and for myself. The door slammed behind us, leaving Robert bleeding on the floor. As Jack shoved me into his car, I prayed my father would somehow find me. It was my only hope now. The car sped through the night, streetlights blurring past as Jack drove with reckless abandon. My mind raced, desperately searching for a way out of this nightmare. Robert's blood-stained face haunted me. Was he still alive? And what about my father? Did he know I was in danger? "Where are we going, Jack?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He glanced at me, his eyes cold and unfamiliar. "Somewhere we can start over. Somewhere no one knows us." I swallowed hard, fighting back tears. "We can't just disappear. People will look for us." Jack's laugh was hollow. "Let them look. By the time they figure it out, we'll be long gone." As we drove, I surreptitiously felt for my phone, hoping to send a distress signal. My heart sank when I realized it was gone, probably left behind at Robert's house in the chaos. Suddenly, Jack's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his face darkening. "Damn it," he muttered. "What is it?" I asked, trying to peer at the screen. He shoved the phone in his pocket. "Nothing. Change of plans." The car screeched as Jack made a sharp turn, heading away from the highway and onto a narrow, wooded road. Fear clawed at my throat as trees closed in around us, swallowing the car in darkness. "Jack, please," I begged. "This isn't you. We can get help, figure this out together." He slammed on the brakes, the car skidding to a stop. "This is me, Eva!" he shouted, his face contorted with rage. "This has always been me. You just never wanted to see it." As he ranted, my eyes darted around, searching for anything I could use as a weapon. That's when I saw it. A familiar dirt path leading off into the woods. With a jolt, I realized where we were. "The cabin," I whispered. Jack's anger morphed into a chilling smile. "Smart girl, Mom's old writing retreat, isolated, off the grid, the perfect place for us to reconnect." My blood ran cold as memories flooded back. Marianne had brought me here once, showing me her sanctuary, but there had been something off about it, hidden rooms, strange locks on the doors. At the time, I'd thought nothing of it. Now, the realization hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just a cabin, it was a fortress. Jack roughly pulled me from the car, marching me down the overgrown path. As we approached the cabin, a sensor light flickered on, illuminating the weathered structure. "Home sweet home," Jack muttered, fumbling with a set of keys. I knew I had to act fast. This might be my only chance. As Jack struggled with the lock, I took a deep breath and made my decision. I slammed my elbow into his ribs with all my strength. He gasped, doubling over, and I took off running into the woods. Branches whipped at my face as I crashed through the underbrush, Jack's enraged shouts echoing behind me. I had no idea where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stop. Suddenly, the ground disappeared beneath my feet. I tumbled down a steep embankment, landing hard at the bottom. Pain shot through my ankle as I tried to stand. Jack's voice grew closer. "Eva, you can't hide from me." Panic threatened to overwhelm me, but I forced it down. I couldn't give up now. Gritting my teeth against the pain, I dragged myself into a dense thicket, praying the darkness would conceal me. As I huddled there, heart pounding, a new sound cut through the night, a distant siren. Hope surged through me. Had someone found Robert? Were they looking for me? Jack must have heard it too. His footsteps stopped, then quickly retreated back towards the cabin. I let out a shaky breath, tears of relief streaming down my face, but I knew this was far from over. I was injured, lost in the woods, with a dangerous man hunting me. And somewhere out there was the truth about Marianne's death, a truth that Jack was willing to kill to protect. As the sirens grew louder, I made a vow. I would survive this night. I would uncover the truth, and I would make sure Jack paid for everything he'd done. With renewed determination, I began to crawl towards the sound of salvation, leaving a trail of blood and broken twigs in my wake. I stumbled through my father's front door, my clothes torn and muddy, my ankle throbbing with each step. Paul's eyes widened in shock as he took in my disheveled appearance. "Eva! My God, what happened?" He rushed to support me, guiding me to the couch. As I collapsed onto the cushions, the events of the past few hours came pouring out in a torrent of words. Marianne's letter, Robert's confession, Jack's true nature, the cabin in the woods. I told him everything. Paul's face grew grimmer with each revelation. When I finished, he sat in stunned silence for a moment before his ex-detective instincts kicked in. "We need to call the police," he said, reaching for his phone. I grabbed his arm. "No, Jack has connections in the department. We can't trust them." Paul's brow furrowed. "Then what do you suggest?" I took a deep breath. "We need to find proof, something concrete that ties Jack to Marianne's death and the missing girl from his past." My father nodded slowly. "I might know someone who can help, an old colleague who works as a private investigator now. But Eva, this is dangerous. Jack's already proven he's willing to kill." "I know," I said, my voice shaking. "But I can't let him get away with this. For Marianne, for that poor girl, for all of us. We have to stop him." Paul squeezed my hand. "All right, let me make a call." As he stepped away to contact his friend, I limped to the window, scanning the street for any sign of Jack. My nerves were frayed, every shadow seeming to hold a threat. Paul returned, his face grim. "My contact can meet us in an hour. He thinks he might have a lead on where to find evidence against Jack." Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. My blood ran cold as I read the message. "I know where you are. You have something that belongs to me. Bring Marianne's letter to the old warehouse on Elm Street in 1 hour, or Daddy Dearest pays the price." Attached was a photo of my father's house, clearly taken from across the street. "Dad," I whispered, showing him the message. "He's here. He's watching us." Paul's face hardened. "We need to leave. Now." We slipped out the back door, my father supporting me as we made our way to his car. As we drove away, I saw a figure step out of the shadows, watching us go. "Jack, where are we going?" I asked, my heart racing. "To meet my contact," Paul replied, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "He might be our only chance to end this." As we sped through the night, my mind whirled. How had everything gone so wrong? How had I missed the signs of Jack's true nature for so long? We pulled up to an abandoned factory on the outskirts of town. A lone figure stood waiting, his face obscured by shadows. "Stay in the car," Paul ordered, reaching for something under his seat. He pulled out a gun, checking it quickly before tucking it into his waistband. "Dad, no," I protested. "It's too dangerous." He gave me a sad smile. "I'm your father, Eva. Protecting you is my job." As he stepped out of the car, a shot rang out. Paul stumbled, clutching his shoulder. I screamed, scrambling out of the car towards him. Another figure emerged from the darkness. Jack, his gun trained on us both. "I warned you, Eva," he said, his voice cold. "Now it's time to face the consequences." I stood frozen, caught between my injured father and my murderous husband. In that moment, I realized the true meaning of Marianne's words. The truth I needed to unveil wasn't just about Jack's crimes. It was about my own strength, my ability to fight back against the darkness that threatened to consume us all. As Jack advanced, his finger tightening on the trigger, I knew I had to make a choice. Run and save myself, or stand and fight for the truth, no matter the cost. With my heart pounding in my ears, I made my decision. Time seemed to slow as Jack advanced, his gun trained on my father. In that moment, I made my choice. I wouldn't run. I wouldn't cower. I would fight. "Jack, stop!" I shouted, stepping between him and my father. "This ends now." His eyes, once warm and loving, now cold as ice, locked onto mine. "You're right, Eva. It does end now." I heard my father groan behind me, struggling to his feet. "Eva, get out of here." But I stood my ground. "Why Jack? Why Marianne? Why any of this?" A twisted smile played on his lips. "She was going to ruin everything, just like you're trying to do now. By telling the truth?" I challenged, my voice stronger than I felt. "The truth," he spat. "The truth is, I'm smarter than all of you. I've always been smarter. Marianne thought she could control me, manipulate me with her secrets and her lies, but I saw through it all." As he ranted, I noticed movement in the shadows behind him. The private investigator? I had to keep Jack talking. "What about the girl from your past?" I pressed. "The one who went missing." Jack's face contorted with rage. "She was nothing. A stupid, nosy bitch who couldn't mind her own business, just like you, Eva, just like Marianne." "So you killed them both," I said, my heart pounding. "Your own mother, Jack?" He laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the abandoned factory. and that it was easy, a little poison in her tea, and all her meddling was over. And now... A gunshot rang out, cutting off Jack's words. He stumbled, a look of shock crossing his face as he crumpled to the ground. Behind him stood Robert, my father-in-law, his hands shaking as he lowered the gun. "I'm sorry," Robert whispered, tears streaming down his face. "I'm so sorry. I should have stopped him years ago." As Jack lay gasping on the ground, the private investigator emerged from the shadows, quickly disarming him and calling for backup. I rushed to my father's side, helping him sit up. "Dad, are you okay?" He nodded grimly, pressing a hand to his wounded shoulder. "I'll live. Eva, I'm so proud of you." Sirens wailed in the distance as I turned back to Robert. "You knew," I said, my voice trembling. "You knew what he was capable of." Robert's shoulders sagged with the weight of his guilt. "I suspected, but I couldn't. I didn't want to believe it. Marianne and we thought we could protect him, change him. We were wrong." As the police cars pulled up, their lights painting the scene in harsh reds and blues, I felt a strange mix of relief and devastation wash over me. It was over, but at what cost? Jack, now handcuffed and being led to a police car, locked eyes with me one last time. "This isn't over, Eva," he snarled. "You'll never be free of me." I watched as they drove away, my whole body shaking with adrenaline and fear. Robert approached me hesitantly, his face etched with sorrow. "Eva, I know I have no right to ask, but can you ever forgive me?" I looked at this broken man, this father who had tried so desperately to save his son from himself. In his eyes I saw the same pain and regret that I felt in my own heart. "I don't know," I answered honestly, "but I think Marianne would want us to try." As the paramedics tended to my father and the investigators combed the scene, I stood in the middle of it all, feeling both stronger and more vulnerable than I ever had before. The truth had been unveiled, but the cost had been devastating. In that moment, I realized that this wasn't the end of my journey. It was just the beginning. There were still questions to be answered, wounds to be healed, and a life to rebuild from the ashes of everything I thought I knew. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, I took a deep breath, ready to face whatever came next. The truth had set me free, but now I had to learn how to live with that freedom. The courthouse buzzed with tension as I took the stand, my eyes locking with Jack's across the room. His face, once so familiar, now seemed like a mask hiding a stranger. As I recounted the events that led to this moment, I felt a strange mix of sorrow and strength. "Mrs. Lawson," the prosecutor began, "can you tell us about the night your mother-in-law, Marianne, died?" I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of Marianne's final message. "Unveil the truth," she had written, and that's exactly what I intended to do. "I found her in her study," I said, my voice steady. "At first I thought she was sleeping, but then I saw the empty teacup, and I knew something was wrong." As I spoke, I watched Jack's face, his jaw clenched, a flicker of something, fear, anger, passing through his eyes. "Did you suspect foul play?" the prosecutor pressed. I nodded. "Not at first, but then I found a letter Marianne had left for me. She warned me about Jack, told me he was dangerous." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Jack's attorney objected, but the judge overruled him. "And what did you do with this information, Mrs. Lawson?" I recounted the harrowing events that followed, my escape to my father's house, the confrontation at the abandoned factory, Robert's shocking intervention. With each revelation, I felt the truth settling over the courtroom like a heavy blanket. When it was Jack's turn to testify, I steeled myself, but nothing could have prepared me for what came next. "I did it," Jack said, his voice cold and emotionless. "I killed my mother. I killed that girl years ago, and I would have killed Eva too, if I'd had the chance." Gasps echoed through the courtroom. I felt my father's hand on my shoulder, steadying me. "Why?" the prosecutor asked, clearly thrown by Jack's sudden confession. Jack's eyes met mine, a chilling smile playing on his lips. "Because I could. Because they all thought they were better than me, smarter than me. But I showed them, didn't I?" As Jack's confession unfolded, detailing years of manipulation and violence, I felt a strange sense of relief washing over me. The truth was finally out, in all its ugly glory. When the verdict was read, guilty on all counts, I expected to feel triumphant. Instead, I felt hollow, drained. As they led Jack away, he called out to me one last time, "You think this is over, Eva? It's never over." Outside the courthouse, I found Robert waiting, looking older and more broken than ever. "Eva," he began, his voice cracking, "I can't begin to tell you how sorry I am for everything." I looked at this man who had lost everything in his misguided attempt to protect his son. "I know, Robert. I know." "What will you do now?" he asked. I thought about Marianne, about her final message to me. "I'm going to live," I said simply. "I'm going to dance again, to create, and I'm going to make sure Marianne's story, and the story of that poor girl, is never forgotten." Robert nodded, tears in his eyes. "She would have been proud of you, Eva, so proud." As I walked away from the courthouse, my father by my side, I felt the weight of the past few months lifting. The truth had been unveiled, just as Marianne had wanted. It hadn't been easy, and the cost had been high, but I had survived. "You okay, sweetheart?" my father asked, concern etched on his face. I smiled, a real smile for the first time in what felt like forever. "I will be, Dad. I will be." The sun was setting as we drove home, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. As I watched the colors blend and change, I thought about the future stretching out before me. It was uncertain, yes, but it was mine. And for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to face it. Marianne's final gift to me hadn't just been the truth about Jack. It had been the strength to reclaim my life, to stand up for what was right, no matter the cost. As I closed my eyes, I could almost hear her voice whispering on the wind. "Dance, Eva, live, love, and never stop seeking the truth." And in that moment, I knew that's exactly what I would do.